Very good. Welcome back to, it is 2:05. We did continue our morning meeting, our 9 a.m. strategic planning meeting. It is January 30th, 2023. So we are continuing our morning meeting at this point in time. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner Jordan is on Zoom, and our executive management team, and we'll go ahead and start where we left off, which was with Jim Amasio regarding the Regional Law and Justice Center of Spokane County.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I indicated before, Randy Bischoff is here. He's the Director of Finance and Administration. And of course, Mr. Sparber is here. He's the Director of Law and Justice, and they're here to assist me in my presentation. If I could have Mr. Valencia please pull up my overhead presentation. Thank you very much, Ron. This will be a very short presentation that I will be making, and I suspect the board members will have questions which they would like to ask either Mr. Sparber or Mr. Bischoff. The purpose of this presentation is to update the board on the Regional Law and Justice Center of Spokane County, and I will be referring to it as the center as we move forward. Next slide, please, Mr. Valencia. This particular slide, board members, advises the board of the purpose of this meeting. I'd like to start off that way. Mr. Commissioner Jordan can understand that. The purpose of my presentation is to advise the Board of County Commissioners on the next steps that the Spokane County staff will take in conjunction with the proposed Regional Law and Justice Center of Spokane County. That particular center consists of the following 3 component items. Number 1, decommissioning Geiger. Number 2, drawing down overcrowding conditions in the downtown jail. And number 3, a community corrections facility. Mr. Sparber will address those later on in the presentation to the extent the board have questions. I would point out that all these, this particular center is all to be located and sited on the Spokane County campus, and that is critical as we move forward in my presentation. Mr. Valencia, may we go to the next slide, please? I would ask the board to please look at their handout on this. The print on the overhead is very small. These are all relevant facts with respect to staff moving forward, and they're very critical. These facts are as follows. On March 12th, 2002, the Washington State Legislature passed legislation requiring cities and counties to adopt essential public facility siting processes. And the reason they did that is because these are facilities that are difficult to site, and many hosting jurisdictions were prohibiting them being sited in those particular locations. The state law that was passed in 2002 identified essential public facilities to include things such as airports, state education facilities, regional transportation facilities, state and local correctional facilities, and solid waste handling facilities. So the legislature required cities and counties to adopt ordinances with respect to citing these particular facilities. Consistent with the state law, in March of 2003, Spokane County and all the cities in Spokane County enacted an ordinance addressing the siting of essential public facilities. We also adopted an interlocal agreement in which all cities and towns within Spokane County agreed to follow the essential public facility siting process that was adopted. The Washington State Commerce Department is responsible for administering the Growth Management Act as well as the Essential Public Facilities Law. And critical to my discussion is what they did on February 19th, 2010. In February 19th, 2010, the Washington State Department of Ecology adopted WAC regulations dealing with the siting of essential public facilities. And in particular, they adopted WAC 365.196.5501, and I cited that in its entirety in my presentation. And the reason I've cited in my entirety in my presentation is because it has a direct bearing on Spokane County moving forward to site our detention facility within the city of Spokane on our county campus. And in particular, I have underlined and highlighted certain language in that WAC regulation. And the WAC regulation basically says, as I've underlined it, that counties and cities may not require applicants who operate essential public facilities to use an essential public facility siting process for projects that would otherwise be allowed by the development regulations. Let me restate that. Basically, what that says is if the host jurisdiction within whose boundaries you want to place an essential public facility provides that you do not have to go through the essential public facility siting process, that you can site it within their jurisdiction under their development regulations, you can simply follow their development regulations and you don't have to go through the essential public facility siting process. The next important fact that I want to remind the board is on December 13th, 2022, the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution, and that resolution puts before the electors within Spokane County on November 7th, 2023, a ballot proposition giving them a right to determine if they want to impose an additional 0.2% sales and use tax in Spokane County. And the sales and use tax can be used for three purposes: criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health. As the board is aware, that out of the 0.2%, by law, Spokane County only keeps 60%. The remaining 40% is allocated to the cities and towns within Spokane County based on their population. Out of the 60% that the county receives, or the 40% that's allocated to cities and towns, 1/3 of that amount must be spent for criminal justice, and 2/3 can be spent for public safety or behavioral health. Under the resolution that the Board of County Commissioners passed, if approved by a majority of the voters, the 0.2% would be effective for a 30-year time frame. The Board of County Commissioners has indicated that if the voters of Spokane County were to pass by a majority vote the 0.2% sales and use tax, they would use a proportionate share of our 60% to design and construct a new detention facility as I have outlined it. And again, the detention facility that we're talking about involves 1, decommissioning Geiger, 2, drawing down the overcrowded conditions in the downtown jail, and 3, building a new community corrections facility. Based upon that information, the next steps that staff intends to take, unless the board would indicate to the contrary, is we would like to hire a consultant, and the consultant would assist Spokane County in filing an application for the city of Spokane for a conditional use permit to build the center as I've articulated on the downtown campus. Number two, we would like to file applications with the city of Spokane for a conditional use permit to site the new facility on the Spokane County downtown campus. And again, the reason we believe we do not have to go through the essential public facility siting process and simply need to get a conditional use permit are the provisions in the WAC regulation. And remember, the WAC regulation was adopted in 2010. It basically says if the host jurisdictions zoning regulations or development regulations, as the case may be, doesn't require you to go through an essential public facility process, but allows that particular facility within its jurisdiction under certain terms and conditions, you can move forward under those terms and conditions. Ron, can I have you go to the next slide, please? And the next one after that, one before that.
I don't think we have that slide.
I think there's two slides I'd like to share with the Board of County Commissioners. Yes, Commissioner French.
So I remember that we did go through an EPF process with the city and got that approval back in, I want to say it's 13 or 12, 13, 14, somewhere around in there. So I mean, we've done two things. I mean, we've got this path forward, and then we also have already got the EPF process that we did go through.
In 2008, Commissioner French, the Board of County Commissioners initiated the EPF process to site a new detention facility. The WAC regulation that I just referenced was adopted in 2010. So when we did it in 2008, there was no WAC regulation that would allow us not to go through the process. In 2008, we sited the facility on the downtown campus. It was a preliminary determination. We never did a SEPA process. In 2009-10, the then Board of County Commissioners decided to reopen up the facility. The reason we did it is because the then Board of County Commissioners wanted to divide the sites. They wanted a community correction facility downtown. They did not want to locate the new jail downtown. And the reason they didn't want to do that is there was some pushback from leadership at the city at that point in time. And also some of the downtown business leaders had concerns about building the new jail downtown. So the county commissioners in 2009-10 redid the process in its entirety again. And as a result of that process, Commissioner French, again, that was 9 and 10 before this WAC regulation was promulgated now, we determined that the community correction facility would be sited downtown on the county campus, and the jail would be sited on the the Medical Lake interchange property, if you will. Subsequent to that, Mr. Sparber was involved in trying to work with the property owner on the site that we'd selected. And for various reasons, the property owner was not necessarily interested in selling at that. And also we had some problems getting sewer and water there. So with respect to that site, Commissioner French, we preliminarily approved both those sites. Then we went through a SEPA process and we finally selected both sites. So in 2010, the downtown, before this WAC regulation was promulgated, the downtown site was community corrections. The Four Lakes interchange site was the new detention facility. When the county learned that the Four Lakes site was not available, we reopened the process again. And at this point in time, the county was still interested in locating the new detention facilities in the unincorporated area. And again, the county's regulations require compliance with the essential public facility siting process to site a detention facility. The cities do not. So, and answer your question, Commissioner French, we have gone through the process on 3 separate occasions, but they're different now. And the reason they're different is because the Department of Commerce in 2010 promulgated a WAC regulation, which now indicates that we do not legally need to go through an essential public facility siting process to locate our new facility downtown. We need to go through a conditional use permit only with the city of Spokane.
So for the benefit of my fellow commissioners, the other dynamic that has changed is the perspective with regard to having a downtown facility versus something on the West Plains. And the thing that has changed this, and this goes back to Mark Richard when he was the president of DSP, was that with the facility in the West Plains, a minute a police officer makes an arrest downtown, they travel to the West Plains, they book, and they come all the way back. It would take a police officer anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half off the street. Where if we had the downtown facility, it's a 5-minute drive from downtown over, you book, you're back on the street. And the big challenge for downtown is how do we keep police officers on the street as opposed to in their vehicle trying to do transport? And so the position, and I'm in the process of getting this memorialized with DSP, is they are going to be supportive of a facility downtown. So that's the other dynamic that's changed this over time. So
One factor, and Mr. Waldorf, I apologize, this was part of my presentation and you don't see it. I have copies of the City of Spokane's development regulations.
Oh, you know what?
Attached.
You've got it.
Attached.
And I do. And under that one, you'll see that the downtown campus is in the community business zone. And then if you go to the second to last page, you'll see that a detention facility is a conditional use permit in the community business zone. So from a legal perspective, the prosecuting attorney's office believes that we do not need to go through the essential public facility siting process as a result of the WAC regulations promulgated by the Department of Commerce. We simply need to move forward with making an application to the City of Spokane for a conditional use permit in conjunction with the facility as I've defined it. And I think Mr. Valencia has got the document on the screen right now. And if you go to the next page, Mr. Valencia, you'll see that if you look at that, a detention facility is simply a conditional use permit in the community business zone. You'll note that essential public facility is treated separately. And if it weren't listed as a detention facility, then we may have to go through the essential public facility siting process. And again, the reason, Commissioner French, and I'm glad you brought this up, this is different than what we've done before is, it's located within the City of Spokane. The host jurisdiction's development regulations don't require the EFP, they simply require a conditional use permit. And so staff, unless the board tells us something to the contrary, we intend to hire a consultant to assist us in preparing the application and the appropriate SEPA documents. And then we intend to submit the application to the City of Spokane for their holding of the necessary public hearings on the conditional use permit. Does the board have any questions that I can answer? We have Mr. Bischoff here and Mr. Sparber here to address any questions that I can't answer.
I guess, so this is just going forward to seek a conditional use permit.
That is correct, Commissioner Cooney. You're absolutely right. And I say, the whole difference here is Department of Commerce promulgated in 2010 this WAC regulation that says if the cities or counties development regulations don't require the EFP process, you don't need to go through it. And so that's why I've got copies of the city's development regulations that make it clear that a detention facility is simply a conditional use permit. It doesn't require the EFP process.
Commissioner Jordan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What level of detail, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. What level of detail needs to be in such an application to the city?
Commissioner Jordan, you asked a good question. I know the City of Spokane has applications online, and I can't answer that question right now. I can tell you, one of the reasons why we want to hire a consultant is because even to cite a conditional use permit, you have to comply with the city's, not only their development regulations, but their comprehensive plan and other GMA tools. So in answer to your question, whatever the city of Spokane's regulations require, we will have to address when we submit our application. And that will require an environmental checklist. And since Spokane County is the lead agency, we're going to assume the responsibility for compliance with SEPA.
Go ahead
And-
with the next one.
I guess I have several related questions, but I guess the first one is, has a decision been made by the county about downtown being the specific location if this was to pass? And then secondly, do we foresee it being challenging to be applying for a permit without a more detailed, specific budget, design, number of beds, size of the building, et cetera?
I think Commissioner Jordan, Mr. Sparber can address the issues about the definition that I've alluded to, and Mr. Bischoff is here to talk about some of the expenses associated with it.
Yeah, Commissioner, so the last time that we did this, we provided a description of the project. We went through the conditional use permit on the last go around. This is to solidify the fact that we're going to use the downtown. So that's your first question, is have we decided whether or not to go downtown? I will tell you, in the three prior EPFs, the downtown site has come out number one in all of the EPF, observation or evaluations. So it's most central location for all the services. It's next to the courts. It's next to, the main, Monroe Street and so forth for the law enforcement to get in. And this project is not as it's defined as a concept right now, as I explained to you and your fellow commissioner, that once we have a better detailed plan on what it is, and that's going to be based on a needs assessment. So I need to do a needs assessment to figure out, determine based on 30 years of growth and going out 30 years, what is the approximate amount of beds, and it's a forecast. And once I get that, then it's a determining factor of what's the composition of the beds. How many of the beds are medium? How many of them fall in the community corrections side of it? We do know that we're going to use the existing jail, which has 462 beds in it. So it'll be located right behind it. The question is, because the EPF that we've done prior, one was, like Jim said, on the West Plains. The second one was on a piece of airport property just right by the waste to energy plant out there. And there was another one that went through the evaluation. The landing spot for the community correction center has always been downtown, central, bus stations, courts, all the treatment and so forth. The question is, did it make sense to move the housing portion of it out to the West Plains? There was, the former sheriff believed that was a better project to have it located on the West Plains over downtown. But there's been a lot of conversation going back and forth about the benefits of having it downtown. So this would just give us the opportunity to work with a consultant to solidify the fact that we can build it downtown and on the site directly behind the jail.
But in direct answer to your question, Commissioner Jordan, from a legal perspective, I would feel comfortable in the Board of County Commissioners confirming staff's recommendation that we use the downtown site. I think your Commissioner French is correct when he said 2008, the downtown site was selected. 2009-10, the medical change interstate site was for the jail. The downtown site was community corrections facility. Then, as Mr. Sparber points out, we moved it from the Four Lakes interchange to a potential Geiger site, SIA site. It was never finalized. So it would be my recommendation, board members, that you confirm the recommendation of staff that we move forward to site it downtown as part of the county campus. Now, Commissioner Jordan, you're correct. The site is going to have to be identified clearly in as far as what the city will require in a conditional use permit. And the reason that's critical is because there has to be an environmental assessment, even at the CUP stage, recognizing that when you go in for a building permit, you may have to upgrade that or augment it, if you will. But there will have to be environmental analysis. When we did the 2010 site, we did go to the city of Spokane for a conditional use permit for the community correction element. And then hearing examiner, Mr. Smith, approved the conditional use permit to be located downtown. But that approval was only good for a 3-year time frame, and so it's lapsed. But we believe now we're going to combine the community corrections with the remaining portion of the center and make one application, because we're taking the view that for purposes of moving forward, it's a detention facility, which is simply a conditional use permit under the city's development regulations.
So thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification. Just to follow up then, I guess my question is, at what point, help me understand the timing. At what point are we going to get a design saying this is the plan? Because it was, I think, Jim, you said in the beginning that if the sales tax is approved, some of that money would be used for the design, right? Which would be a later date. But it sounds like we need some level of design in order to apply to the city for a conditional use permit. So when is that design coming and how?
So I'm shooting for a conceptual drawing by the end of March. And I'm working on the needs assessment right now, that portion of it. And then I'll be working with Integris Architecture. We have a standing contract with them to help put together some conceptual ideas on the site. But they're, Chris, at this level, it's boxes on there with approximate square footage. The design portion will come in the next phase. If it is, the voters do approve it, then we'll head into the design phase, and I'll be working with Kyle and his group on that portion of it.
Scott?
To follow up on Mike's comments and Commissioner Jordan's question, the notion of design is kind of an interesting one. We want to get far enough along on design so that we answer the what question for the community, for all of you and for the community. What is it going to be? What is it going to look like? What's going to be included? What are all the elements? We won't, though, go to a full design until we know if the voters support it.
Right.
That's when you'll get into more of engaging with your contractors and consultants and in preparation for the construction itself. So the conceptual design, call it 5%, 10% designs, is what we'll have that Mike's referring to, so that we can answer the what question. What is it going to look like? What's everything included?
So when is the conditional use permit application made then? And what level of design is needed for that?
Again, Jim said he'd have to review the documents to see what's needed to do the application. And I'm not sure, Chris, if it's a description of the project or if it's an actual rendering of it. And I'd have to do some more, but they could go concurrently. Once we have one done, we could do the other, so.
The hiring of the consultant will help us with someone who has expertise in doing conditional use permits for these types of facilities. Will help inform us on the data and the content that's needed for that application. So this isn't next week we're submitting application. This is weeks and months down the road, because the CUP will require some time through the City of Spokane process. I believe, and I'm looking at our planning director and our hearing examiner, CUPs go through the hearing examiner for jurisdictions. So we'll have to develop a lot of that information, which will inform along the way, and a CUP would likely be later in the spring before it actually happens.
Thank you.
Commissioner Waldron?
Well, I think I had the similar questions as to Commissioner Jordan. I guess coming into this, I know there's been a long history, but we toured the facilities on Friday, and there's drawings of version A, version B. I mean, there's been about, West Plains version, different versions on this campus. So from me coming onto the board, I don't know if this board's made a decision that it will be on the county campus for sure. I don't think that we're on record doing that. And I have a lot of questions about how we can move forward without any of these details. I understand the conditional use process takes a long time,
Right.
but we haven't even had a conversation with the community about the latest versions that you are starting to put together, right? That include community corrections as well as if there are any other beds needed. So I just feel like we're really getting ahead of where the community is on this. So that's my big concern.
And the challenging part of that, Commissioner, is that if we are gonna site it in this siting location, I have to know that we can site it in that location, behind the jail, before I start informing the public. This is our concept, it's gonna go behind the jail. And that's kind of what this is that our need to know for sure that we can site it behind the backside of the jail before we proceed on. So it's kind of, you're right, it's kind of two different things going parallel, but you have to be able to say this is where it's gonna land if we're gonna be out educating everybody about what it is and where it's gonna go.
I think it's a correct statement, and Commissioner Kearns and Commissioner French, please correct me. When the board placed this before the electors, one of the ideas they had in their mind was a new facility, as Mr. Sparber has explained it. But remember, the money can be used for criminal justice, public safety, and behavioral health. And so, and more importantly, I think we need to refresh our memories. Cities and towns don't have many resources, funding resources. But this is a funding resource for small cities and towns, if you will, excluding the city of Spokane and the city of Spokane Valley. So they get a proportionate share of this particular money to be used for the same three purposes. And so by the board placing this in front of them, the board certainly can use this money to put in new centers, I've explained it, but the other entities can use it for any of those three purposes. And I think it was not just the county building a new detention facility, but please correct me, gentlemen, but it was also making these resources available for criminal justice and public safety and behavioral health and all these smaller entities who don't have funding resources like we do. I could be mistaken, but please correct me, board members.
I think you're spot on. I mean, and I think that's something that I fully expect is going to be overlooked over the next, over the next 9 months, is that it's not just money coming to the county to build this regional law and justice center. It's a portion coming to the county, and then it's a portion going to each of the individual cities throughout our community that they, like you said, can use those funds for their public safety, criminal justice, and behavioral health needs as well.
Well, and so now starting my 13th year talking about a jail. And they talked about it for 4 years before I got here. So it has been a evolution of an idea over these last several years. And every time we go through one of these phases, we learn a little bit more. And, we've clearly learned through, hiring David Bennett and the Mark Arthur effort and all of these other efforts, it has helped us hone down on what it is that we truly need as a community. And it is a package of all of the above. We need the programs to be able to keep people out of jail that don't need to be in jail. We need the program money to be able to create a faster process for processing these people, like the intake facility we tried to put together so that, folks that are arrested don't necessarily have to go to jail. They can be released back into the street in a safe manner. They don't have to spend the night in the jail. But we also know that we need money for behavioral treatment. And where does that money come from? It's not going to come out of the general fund as we're currently configured, because we don't have a a pot full of $4 or $5 million to pay for these programs. That's what this ballot measure will do, is it will pay for both the soft and hard side of the criminal justice system. And so we've now gone through all of this work. And so now it's time to bundle it up, put it in front of the voters and say, here's the result of, 16 years worth of work. Are you on board or not? If they are, great. If they aren't, well, that's informative too. But it's about time we give the voters a chance to weigh in on this, because up to this point, it's all been, inside the jurisdictions.
But Commissioner Waldorf, your question is a good question, and that's why,
Well, maybe this should have been done before you put a ballot measure on the ballot.
this is just one element.
That's what I'm just saying.
I would just
Maybe we
simply-
need to have a little more detail, because I agree that at some point, we have a responsibility. We toured the jails on Friday. There's definitely gonna be, we need to make investments all throughout our criminal justice system to make it more efficient and to reduce recidivism and hopefully to prevent crime from occurring in the first place. So I'm very interested in something that will do all those things for our community with input from our community. But right now, I'm not supporting the one that's on the ballot right now as it is, unless I get some more detail. And I'm also wondering if sales tax is the right mechanism. So I just have a lot of questions. That's why this process seems premature to me.
Well, and I can appreciate the fact that it is premature from your standpoint, because you are at the front end of, that fire hose. And, it took a couple of years for me to get caught up and fully understand all of the different elements of the criminal justice system. And, I must admit, I'm still learning. But if not now, when? And we are at that critical point to where, if we don't do something, we're going to have to start kicking people out of the jail. And, whether that's U.S. Marshals, whether that's Department of Corrections, whether that's other people that would rather have incarcerated, what do we do? We're clearly running out of space in the end. So what do? What's the alternative? I don't know. I don't know of any other alternative.
So I'll say for me, I think going forward with the conditional use permit to ensure that we can be downtown, from what I've seen, being downtown versus being out at a different location is the way to go from an efficiency, all those things, because you've got to get people back and forth to courts, all of those purposes. So I'm okay, hearing this today to move forward with the conditional use permit. It doesn't mean it's all happening until the voters approve. But I think in order for the voters to approve, we have to have more than concept.
Yep.
So, that's an education process with the community that has to happen, to know how many, what do we, because I don't know right now, but I think trying to figure out at least if we can get the conditional use permit, because I do feel like downtown is where it needs to be. I think if we try to split it and the administrative costs and the additional officers, corrections officers, we don't even have enough corrections officers at this point, would be detrimental. So that's where I'm at. So I'm okay with the location. I've said all along that I wasn't sure that the 2/10 versus doing a bond, I had questions on that leading into it. But I think, figuring out whether it can be downtown or not is going to be key, because if we can't get a conditional use permit, then we've got a lot of other things to think about.
Well, Commissioner CUNY, I'm sorry.
Commissioner
Chris had a
Jordan,
question.
did you? Mr.
Well,
Jordan?
this is, I don't want to get us too off topic to the issue being asked, so two questions. One is first a comment. I appreciate Mike taking us on a tour of the jail and kind of the work that you're doing to educate us and bring us up to speed on some of the history. So thank you for that. And I'm continuing to learn. I was wondering, going back to the structure of the sales tax, whether there's been any level of coordination with the city of Spokane or the other cities about whether they would be contributing to this facility, how they would intend to use their portion of the money that was to be approved. And that's all I've got for right now.
Commissioner French, you wanted to.
Well,
address that?
you raise a good point in terms of when do we have that conversation with the city, the other cities being, more specifically City of Spokane and Spokane Valley. And, they have been part of the ongoing conversation through the Law and Justice Council. And, but once we've got a concept that would at least rise to the level that we've got enough for a conditional use permit, then we have a foundation to go to the city of the Valley and City of Spokane and say, okay, conceptually, here's where we're at. Are you in to help us or are you out? And but you've got to have something to talk about. And I think that's what this next step will provide us is, kind of a scope and a foundation to have that conversation with. But you're right, we do have to have that conversation, because it would be, whether they are in or out will help size the project.
Chairman Cuny, Commissioner Jordan, I was around when we did the first 1/10 of 1% sales tax. And then Commissioner Ross Kelly said, Mr. Amacio, let's see if we can't get the cities and towns to give us a proportionate share of their money back. So I prepared several interlocal agreements, and unfortunately, with respect to that particular 1/10, I didn't get any traction from any of the cities and the towns. For the very reason is, the smaller cities and towns don't have many funding sources.
No.
I don't recall, at that point in time, board members, the city of the Valley and/or the city of Spokane offering to give back to the county a certain percentage of their 40% for issues that we were looking at that time with regard to the jail. The jail's been around for all sorts of times for remodeling and upgrades. So that doesn't mean that we can't explore that option again through Mr. Sparber and see if we can get some traction.
Sorry, I got another one. If we need to move on, let me know, but I'm just got a couple questions. When I went over to the Wasac newly elected officials training, I believe it was identified that there is an item on the legislative agenda for the counties to request that the legislature basically do an inventory or a study, or be provided a study of the needs for updating jails and building new correctional facilities around the state. So it sounds like that's an item that is being advocated for at the statewide level, because the jail question is not just a Spokane County question, right? So I guess my question is, if the legislature 2 years, 3 years down the road does decide to provide some funding to assist with an effort like this, how does that affect potential designs or conditional use permits if the amount of money that is available changes, or the requirements from the legislature change to take advantage of their of any potential funding that may come in the future?
So Chris, on that, I mean, I'm not on LOC, so I was not part of those conversations, but I think because construction would be several years down the road before we construct, that if they do, and I'm not sure, but I would think that we could use that towards the construction side of it. So then if the 0.2% were to pass, we could use that to then fund programming or additional law and justice activities. So that's, because I've thought about that also, and I don't know for sure. I mean, we won't know till the state does something, because it's my understanding that like all of our jails, King County is ours, several were built back in the early 80s because the state did a bond issue to provide funding for that. Just talking to our lobbyists, the thought is that the state is having a hard enough time trying to do the funding for all the things they're trying to do right now, that they probably are not getting any funding for jails. But, that's part of at least seeking the question to the state legislature right now, to see if they're willing to let a study happen for it.
Yeah, and Mary's exactly right with regard to the timing. But the other part of it is that a number of these jails that were constructed in the state back in the 80s that are suffering from the same functional obsolescence that we are struggling with also house Department of Corrections inmates for the state. And I think the state's interest is that if we can't do something with updating our facilities and creating bed capacity to where it meets the needs of our community and the state, guess who we're going to kick out of the jail first? The state. And that creates a cost for them that they want to avoid for obvious reasons. So, at some point you reach that threshold where there's just not enough room in the end for everybody, and then you start eliminating people that are in the facility. And for too many facilities across the state, that's where they're at.
But, and the other concern is right now the state is doing their sentencing guideline commission, I think. So they're looking at the sentencing guidelines, and the concerns from counties is that they may be looking at some of those sentencing guidelines that would put people who currently are over 365 days in jail just below that threshold, which would put the burden on the counties.
Yep.
So that's the other concern, which would feed into then what the bed space would need to be, for the jail, for a facility, to see what that would mean. So there is a lot of things kind of happening in this legislative session.
And I pledged you, as I work through these concepts and this needs assessment, I'll have regular updates to the board, so everyone's aware, along with our project timeline and how we're working on that portion of it.
So for today, I guess I just need to understand, we're just looking, that it's just a discussion as to move forward with a conditional use permit
Correct.
application to the city of Spokane, is that correct?
Well, it's to get
Let's hire a consultant.
right?
Yeah.
There was no action requested to the commissioners today. This was really, we needed to evaluate whether the county needed to undertake an essential public facility siting process or something else. And the evaluation that our civil department helped us with is, no, we do not have to do an EPF, we can do a CUP. We're not going to do a CUP tomorrow, it has to be developed. We'll have to bring on someone to help us do that. So more than anything, it was just an update to the board. So lots of other information being requested. We want to know it as well. That's answering the what question. And as Mike said, these are going to be in parallel tracks as they go along. So today was just informational only for the board to let you know what the evaluation was that the team had done.
Mr. Simmons, staff would like to, however, move forward with potentially hiring a consultant to feather this out a little bit more, if you will. And in that regard, I think Mr. Sparber has the legal ability, if he's got money in his budget by Mr. Bischoff, to employ a consultant to assist us, Mr. Simmons, if you'd like us to move in that direction, not just to get more information together, not to file any applications yet, but I will leave that in your good hands, Mr. Simmons, if you want to move in that direction, or if you want Mr. Sparber to move in that direction.
I think if that's under 50,000.
That's right. And
That's what we're looking
it's our expectation, Commissioner CUNY, that we would be under that amount at this point in time, but that would help us feather out some more details that Commissioner Waldrop and Commissioner Jordan and the rest of the board members may be interested in seeing. Okay, well, unless the board has any questions, I appreciate all your good questions. And if we can provide you with any additional information, please get a hold of Mr. Sparber, Mr. Bischoff, or myself, and we'll be glad to update you. Thank you.
And then Commissioner French, you had a miscellaneous matter from this morning that we wanted to continue.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I didn't want to
Thank you.
adjourn this morning's meeting until.
Yes. So, thank you, Madam Chair, I appreciate the reminder. We got a presentation this morning on an ILA with the East Valley School District for a resource officer. And the number that we were given, after I asked a couple times, was that the cost of a resource officer was going to cost $98,000 plus or minus some change. Under further investigation, that resource officer position is probably going to be in excess of $200,000 or more than twice what was presented and stuff. So if the school district that is not operating under the same 1% cap that we are is only paying $41,000, then we're committing $160,000 to this resource officer, and we've got the 1% cap that is that we have to deal with and stuff. So I guess what it raises from my standpoint is, I fully am in support of the resource officer program. It's done, I think, everything we expected it to do, and fully expect that we would provide that to all of our school districts other than School District 81 and stuff. The question I have is the split the right split? And I don't know, but I think it's worthy of us talking about, what are we doing with regard to the split? And should we be expecting more for the school districts? Are we happy with, the school district only paying, 20% as opposed to when I first got here, the school districts were paying 50% of the resource officer and we were paying the other 50%. Do we need to revisit this, I guess is the question. So, and I don't know what my dog is in this thing yet, other than I think it's worthy of a conversation for us.
So I would say this is the last contract of this school year. I think this is the last one that is coming before us. So I think it's definitely worthy of a conversation for them to
next
have
year.
as we start to move forward to the next contracts, to see if schools have gotten additional funding for safety and security that would help fund us. I think when I first joined because it was right after the Freeman shooting, I think we were at 40, it was like a 40-60 split at that time. But our wages for our officers have gone, deputies have gone up. So I agree. I think it'd be worth having that conversation as we move forward. So no deputies here to direct them, to state, but I think that it shouldn't just, just an automatic renewal since it's on an annual basis. Definitely for next year, because I think this was the last one for this year.
And I remember it like you did, around a 60-40, because even though they were designated at the schools, if there was an emergency, they could be called away from the school to do duties unrelated to the school. And I think that's why there was slightly more sort of on our end than there was on the school district's end. But I'm surprised to hear that this is an 80-20 split now.
It's an 80-20 split, and, this is what I was trying to get when the deputies were here, the representative sheriff's office was here, is what it's a number, because I remember when we did the 9 Mile resource officer, the cost for a Stevens County deputy fully loaded was about $150,000. And we went to Stevens County as opposed to Spokane County because of the cost. They were a lot less than we were. And so then when I got the number of 98 this morning, I've gone, wait a minute, that doesn't jive with what we just did. And so that's why I went and talked to Randy, and he said, no, it's much larger than that. So it's unfortunate we didn't get the right number this morning when they were all here, so we could have had this conversation. But anyway, I just wanted to raise it for the board's awareness, and I agree, this, maybe for this school year, we do something, but for next school year, moving forward, maybe there's a different split, or we go back to where we were, 60-40 or whatever. It's up to the board to decide.
No, I definitely think it'd be worth having the conversation and seeing what the difference in funding. I know some of the school districts, the federal government is bringing more money down for security for schools. So I don't know how that would play into it. I think we can all agree that safety of the kids is first and foremost. Yeah.
Without saying, the need for the resource officer is not a debate. We need them there. It's a matter of how we pay for them.
So I'll be happy to look at the contract and have those discussions with the school districts.
We'll flag those contracts before they come for renewal to be evaluating and bringing that conversation back up, since this is the last one for this year. We'll have plenty of time to look at those renewals and evaluate the appropriate splitting of the costs.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Under Sheriff Kittlestead knows that we're having this conversation this afternoon, since he's not here. So,
Thank you.
okay, is there anything else from this morning's meeting before I adjourn the meeting, the continuation of the meeting from this morning?
I have another miscellaneous, but I can wait till the end of this meeting because we got people waiting. Oh, well, I just wanted to say I got contacted by several folks with Department of Revenue and some of our community organizations about the working family tax credit. It's a new Washington State working family tax credit. It's an addition to the federal working family tax credit. And I was just hoping we could, it becomes effective this Wednesday, February 1st, when people start to do their taxes for this last year. And so I was just hoping we could have Jared put some information out, on the website from the county, just sharing out any information. So our families and taxpayers know that they can get an additional credit this year, because it's kind of a new thing. So I just printed off the flyer, and Chris, I'll send you one, sorry.
So this is coming from,
Department of Revenue, Washington State. So it was approved, I think, last year, and it becomes effective this week for 2022 income.
They've been advertising quite a bit on television, this particular program, I
Yeah.
noticed.
Yeah. So just wanting the county, I was just hoping, I just wanted to flag it for everyone, if you wanted to share it out on social media, and if Jared maybe wanted to share something, then we could share it on all of our social media pages if anyone was interested, so. And also the free tax clinics open up all throughout Spokane County, run through United Way. So it'd be good to flag those and how people can sign up for those free clinics as well, if that's all right. Just wanted to get the word out.
I don't have an issue letting people know that there's the potential for additional dollars for them. And the free tax clinics, I mean, a lot of elderly people use those.
Yes, I was down the hall from the one at the Northeast Community Center, and it's very well used, and they fill up fast, so it's good that people call and make appointments as soon as possible in February, so.
Reasonable.
All right,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, so then I will adjourn our continuation of our morning meeting. It is 3:03. And then we will start with I will call to order then our working session meeting from January 30th, 2023, that was going to start at 2 o'clock, that is now starting at 3:03. And is Mark? Okay, I guess Chris Anderson, our
Thank
hearing
you very
examiner,
much.
you're gonna brief us on our first item.
Good afternoon, everyone, and for Commissioner Waldron and Commissioner Jordan, who I've not formally met, my name is Chris Anderson. I am the county's hearing examiner. And this afternoon, I'm here with Carrie Driscoll from the City of the Valley to present the interlocal agreement. This would have me basically handling the overflow from the valley contracts with a number of other hearing examiners. And this just kind of adds me to their roster of backups to do land use and various other administrative hearings for them.
Thanks, Chris. Carrie Driscoll, City Attorney for Spokane Valley for one more day. For those who have not heard, I'm going to take a little time off and then figure out what the next step is beyond that, but do a little travel with family. So, yeah, we approached the county, talked to Chris and Mark McLean about whether we could do an interlocal agreement with Spokane County to have Chris act as our backup hearing examiner. We previously had an interlocal agreement with Spokane County where Dave Hubert was our primary hearing examiner. But we had a number of conflict situations based on some family relations he had and with one of our developers. And so we canceled that, I think 3 or 4 years ago. But what we've discovered is we currently have 2 contracts, City of Spokane with Brian McGinn, and then private attorney Andy Kottkamp out of Central Washington that does a lot of hearing examiner work. And with as busy as we are in Spokane Valley with development and a number of things, rather than have our property owners and folks looking for hearing examiner services get delayed, we want to balance it out as well as we can. And we expect to use Chris 2 or 3 times a year. We don't want to overload him, but we also want to keep things moving. And so we had that discussion and came up with a proposed agreement that we think will work. The county's standard rate for Chris's work. And hopefully we can get this going and we look forward to having a renewed relationship on this.
Go ahead.
So the good news is you have no relations in the valley?
None that I'm currently aware of.
You're aware of.
I had a handful of friends, but none in the development community, so I think I should be pretty clear of any conflicts.
And you feel like based on your workload, you're able to take on the additional?
It shouldn't be a problem, as everything, it kind of ebbs and flows, but certainly as the backup, it would be an as needed and based on scheduling availability. So I don't foresee any issues with workflow on that.
That'll be great. I think it helps serves, like you were saying, carry the citizens in the valley to try to get the hearing examiner work done sooner than later. So, I see it as a good thing for the valley. So, thank you. Just making sure, Commissioner Jordan, that you're not raising your hand. So, yell at me if I'm not looking right.
Thanks for keeping me included.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Carrie, thank you. I didn't realize that you're going to take some time off, so good for you. I hope you enjoy that.
I will. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's going to then take us to, since we're an hour behind, Doug Chase.
Okay. Presentation. Perfect. Okay, well.
Good for now.
News. Yes. Good. See, I think Ron has a presentation. So appreciate the opportunity to brief the board. Now, this is a project that Aaron and I have visited with you a few times and welcome the opportunity to rebrief on refresh on a couple of the key points of the project that we've spoken on. If we go ahead and move to the next slide, Ron. You may recall we originally briefed the board back in July of last year and then again in October. Next slide, please. And so this is specific to the bays 2 and 3 of the fairgrounds roof and heating and ventilation air conditioning system, which both of which have expired. And the let's see, usually sit closer to the monitor so we can go. Notes here. Okay, great. And the short of it is the HVAC system has failed. The roof has both have outlived their original estimated lifespans, if you will. And we literally, unfortunately, have buckets that are used during events to collect leaking water And the cooling system, next slide, has failed. They brought somebody out in 2021 and evaluated it, and they literally don't make parts for it. So it's unrepairable. So we came in, we did an assessment back then prior to the visit in July, utilized assistance from facilities from a contractual architect. And you can see here, it's one of the largest used portions at the fairgrounds. They make up over 35,000 square feet. And the existing units, that beautiful photo is of the 5 existing units that are located up on top in the cupola. Next slide. And again, I mentioned the inability to repair those. And next slide. And so at that time, in July, we had worked with our architects. They did a real rough estimate, if you will, of what we might be looking at for repairs. And at the conclusion of that meeting, the board directed staff to go back and do a more formal assessment, be able to come up with, I guess, tighter cost estimates and a clearer picture, if you will, of what exactly might be involved in resolving that. So then next slide, please. So between that time, when we came back in October, we were able to utilize the services of the Garland Company. And they, in combination with Fisher Roofing, and they were able to get up there and do a full-on assessment, crawl up in the attic, the cupola, and everywhere in between, and put together a formal package, if you will, a cost estimate, and we have the ability to work directly with the Garland Company through the Purchasing Omnia contract. Next slide, please. And so with that, as a result of that assessment, they looked at 3 different options, if you will, for the roof. And one was a simple repair. The other was a 10-year repair, if you will. And then the third was more of a roof replacement or retrofit, where they could come in with a 40-year roof that's actually warranted for 30 years, no dollar limit, materials, labor, everything. Again, and that was the estimate there at the $3,031,494, and the HVAC was just under $1,400. So we had a total project estimate at that point of just under $4.5 million. Next slide.
On the warranty for the roof, is that an installer warranty or is that a manufacturer warranty?
I believe it is both. I have a copy of it. I was looking
That's all
at.
right, I don't need to know now, but at some point you might want to make sure that that also includes a manufacturer warranty, because you've got installers that are going in and out of business. And in 30 years, you don't know if the installer will be there, but the manufacturer will be.
Yeah,
Sure.
Kind of a deal.
pretty sure the contract includes the manufacturer's warranty on materials and like mechanical warranties as well.
Then you want to make sure you understand the maintenance that you have to.
Yes,
Continue the warranty, yeah.
Manufacturer.
exactly.
And I have that document. I'll hand to our attorney. I only brought one with me today. But
That's all right.
so
I don't need to.
yeah,
We can get back to you
we
if
can
this
look at
works.
that. Sounds like a very good warranty from what I'm told. And as part of that, you can see we're incorporating additional insulation. The roof system literally goes over the top of the existing roof, so it adds some structural strength and enables the opportunity to add additional R19, which is very helpful in meeting the energy code and plays into the mechanical side of the units that have been specified. So Brandon with FSI Engineering, I think he modeled like 7 different options, and this really was the only one that fit the energy code and works very well with the site and the project. Okay, next slide.
But would you be into permitting on this project?
I have my timeline, and I believe the permitting would start.
Before June 30.
Yes, before the energy code changes.
Yes,
Yes, I
yeah.
believe they would get the permits in well before then. They would.
Okay. Because that'll materially affect your cost if you don't get it in before June 30.
Yeah. Yes.
That's all right, just,
And I think they're well ahead of that as far as we would look. Effectively, the contract is, will be scheduled for your consent agenda a week from tomorrow, should the briefing go well today. So that's where I'm landing. And I believe that timeline would allow them to have and complete all permits. And our goal is to have the project completed by October. And so there's obviously the biggest weight is the ordering the materials, and we're waiting on those materials to get here and the permitting and so forth. And so one of the big changes in this design, we're able to take those 5 units that are up in the pergola where there's currently water and air going in and move those down on the ground on the south end of the building. That will save significant cost and long-term maintenance for accessibility, and it will also help with the integrity and stability long-term of the roof, of course, too. And we're able to go with the changes in technology from when the original units were acquired and installed. There's currently 5 of them, and we will be going down to 3 units. 2 of them really the HVAC. The third is more of an air exchanger ventilation type unit, which again, we're looking to reduce our energy usage through this process. Next slide, please. Okay, and so our action requested is we are looking to have scheduled before you on a week from tomorrow, the consent agenda to consider awarding the project for P12385 to Garland DVS. And it would allow us to complete this project. And as I mentioned, the timeline currently would have, if everything comes together as expected, and they feel very confident that they'll have all the work done by October of this year. So we're pretty excited to be able to be in a position to move forward and have the project completed with the funds that were approved through the capital budget and for the 2023 year. So we have these funds have been approved through the budget process as well. And we would expect to come in within the budget that we have to work with.
Just a quick follow-up to Doug. So for the commissioners, the funding of 4.5, about 1.4 was committed out of REIT 1. And then the revenue replacement indirect, ARP indirects, the commissioners had committed those to future ERP and then other facility improvements. But we also have, the commissioners have a request into the state for about $1.5 million through their capital budget process through the Fair and Expo. So if we land that, then it's less use of our revenue replacement and ARP indirects. So those are the funding sources I just wanted to point to for you all.
Any other questions for Erin? I see you've unmuted.
No, I just wanted to say thank you for the support of the project. Our events are looking forward to these upgraded amenities that won't involve 5-gallon Home Depot buckets.
I'm sure they are. They've just got one more season to deal with it, so.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Jordan?
What was the first funding source again? I apologize, I just couldn't hear that.
REIT 1, or the real estate excise tax, number 1, and that was for about $1.4 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if that's good, we're really appreciate your support with that. And I know Erin's prepared to speak to the lodging tax award as well.
Okay.
As a
Erin, you're up.
All right. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. As Doug mentioned, I'm here to brief you today on the lodging tax funds that the Fair and Expo has been awarded from the city of Spokane Valley. This is something we've participated in annually for a number of years and are thankful to be awarded these funds. What I'm asking today is for your approval and to execute this agreement on the February 7th consent agenda next week to accept these funds for our tourism promotion efforts. We will be using this funding for marketing of the fair, marketing of our year-round events, and marketing our facility to attract new and future events. And what I would like to do is share a little bit of a highlight with you of the presentation that we shared with the Lodging Tax Committee back in October. We celebrated our 71st fair, and we are looking forward and busily planning our 72nd fair to take place September 8th through the 17th of this year. Next slide, please. There's just going to be a lot of pretties here to get you excited about the fair. The next slide, please. Some of the facts that we shared with the Lodging Tax Committee is that our 10-day fair generates over $12 million in economic impact. We had an attendance of 210,616 people in 2022. We broke a number of records for the fair with carnival, food, and alcohol sales. When our vendors are here, they're shopping at local retailers, purchasing fuel, etc., and staying in our community. Our carnival company, when they're on site, they have some great relationships with local manufacturers to supply them with repairs and needed equipment to operate here and as they move on down their routing. And also our fair exhibitors dine, shop, and purchase fuel and supplies to care for their livestock while here. Next slide, please. Just highlighting our grandstand entertainment. That's always a very popular draw for the fair. We kick things off with 2 nights of PRCA rodeo. And you can see the number of states listed here. We draw from quite a few different areas to attend our rodeo, selling over 8,700 tickets. Next slide, please. We kicked things off for our concert series on Monday night with Cole Swindell. Again, a sampling of the states where we tracked visitors from, selling over 4,100 tickets. Next slide. Elle King was our next concert with over 3,000 tickets sold. And next slide. And our big record-breaking night was, of course, Nelly. So if you're paying attention to the fair, we got a lot of coverage for that. It was a pretty exciting night to pack out our grandstands. And the next slide, please. And there's an awesome shot from our Nelly concert of those full stands. Next slide. And we wrapped the weekend up with our truck and tractor pulls on Friday night. And if you go into the next slide, you'll see that we finish out the weekend strong with our demolition derby on Saturday and Sunday. Always a popular event. And the next slide. Part of when we're asking for lodging tax funds is we want to talk about how the Fair and Expo and the fair specifically generate room nights in the community. And we do that. Our entertainers, our attractions, our nearly 300 vendors, our livestock exhibitors, rodeo contestants, our out-of-town fair workers, parking staff, security, our Oregon Beverage that handles our alcohol sales, and our concert attendees and fair guests stay at area hotels. And we are able to track over 3,900 room nights just for the fair. And the next slide, please. We want to highlight that our year-round events are bringing in guests that are staying at hotels. It may be sales staff at the RV show. It could be dealers, exhibitors, the vendors, guests attending the shows. Next slide. And Ron, if we could just click through these, they're just some beauty shots of when we get it all filled up here and all the different activities that take place here at the Fair and Expo. With our over 125 events a year, we keep this place hopping. Those look lovely. Thank you, Ron. If we could go to the last slide, again, just recapping that we're requesting your approval to receive this grant opportunity to help us market all of our efforts throughout the year. Any questions?
Mr. French?
Well, as always, great job, Erin, and looking forward to another fair season. I was wondering, have you had a chance to make any progress with regard to fees for community education efforts? We've talked about, groups like the Cattlemen's Association and some of those other organizations that don't raise money. They just want to educate about the prospects of being in the ag industry or the cattle industry and stuff. So have you made any progress or having any conversations about that?
We have had some conversations internally. It's definitely on our radar, something that we need to address here in the next few months as we start signing up folks to participate in the fair. I think there was a great suggestion from Commissioner Cuney when we talked about this last time. And yes, the discussion of how we could put together a scholarship fund, as you mentioned, to help cover some of these costs as an enterprise fund. We really try to capture those dollars from everyone participating in the fair, but I think there's some opportunities here to follow up and have further discussion on.
Okay, thank you.
So Erin, I've got a question. So we got 73,000. Is that a typical of what we've seen over the years, or is that more or less, or?
It's a little bit more. The range really has been in the $30,000 range into around 60,000. So yeah, we had asked for more this year and we were awarded that. Yeah, we actually had asked for 100,000. And so we felt great that the committee awarded us the 73.
Okay. Very good. Well, that's exciting.
Everything helps.
I was gonna say, I bet you can put it to good use, so.
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions for Erin? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. And yeah, I just have to echo what Commissioner French said. I mean, you did a great job with the fair this last year. I think the events were all exciting. Obviously it was back in full swing. So super excited to see what you can come up with for this year.
Thank you. Yeah, we should have a theme nailed down here in the next couple weeks. So it's getting official.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, that's gonna take us to Scott Chesney.
Commissioners, thank you. We are here chiefly to answer any questions you may have regarding the appointment of planning commissioners. The action taken last week to recreate the planning commission in light of the 5-commissioner model, with 1 from each district and 2 at large. And of course, we're also here to beg a little bit that you do get some nominees together and we can reconstitute the planning commission as soon as possible. There's a lot of work to do, as all of you know. We have comprehensive plan amendments teed up. We'll be working on the land capacity analysis for the steering committee. And so there's a full workload and we'd like to get them started. So happy to answer any questions about the process or anything else we could do for you.
So I believe that there are 3 members on the planning commission now that live in my district. I think Mr. Rayner, Mr. Brokaw, and Mr. Yeah, bang. And so one of those has got to drop off because I can't have more than two. And so what I was leading toward was Rayner as my appointment, and then I was going to offer up Brokaw as at large, because both of them are experienced, and as you said, we've got a full plate. Having experienced people there would be helpful. Are there any concerns from your standpoint of me offering up those two, or would you rather?
None. They're both productive members for the last 2 years, and we would welcome them back.
Okay, all right. So I would be offering that up then.
So do we have the list that we could put it up on the screen?
The list.
And did we get which districts? I know Gina, you were gonna say which districts people live in, because I didn't see that on the.
Oh, yes, so like what Commissioner French stated, Brokaw, Hamp, and Rayner now live in District 3. Jim Corolla
District
lives in-
5
Oh, District 5, sorry.
Yeah.
Jim Corolla lives in your district for number 2. And then Stephen Pohl is in Clyde Hosties in District 4. So let me pull up my,
I think, I don't know, last Jeff, you and I talked, we weren't sure where Stephen was.
I double checked and we did confirm
Wait,
in yours.
who's in mine? Okay.
I believe, Gina, I sent it to Gina.
correct, Clyde Hosties in District 4 and,
No, I'm sorry, Clyde.
Clyde's
Yeah,
in-
yeah, that's right. 4.
Yeah, Clyde's in mine, I know that for sure. It was Stephen Pohl was the one we were not sure.
He has not reapplied yet. I only looked up people whose applications were on hand.
and there is nobody that applied for, right now for District 1 for Commissioner Jordan District.
Okay, so you
So
read.
those are the only
Or
5
3, right.
applications
Or
that we
3.
have.
Yeah, there's, I don't think there's anybody in mine either. None of the former ones
Correct.
live in my district either, so.
So did Stephen Pohl not want to,
He did, and
that's what I thought.
we encouraged them all to submit a new application, and they all said they were going to do that. Stephen served more recently as
Let me
chair,
double
and he agreed to serve another term in that role with your
I'm
reappointment.
sorry, I did have that.
Okay, so he was gonna serve as chair.
Well, they would now have to re-vote on him, but
I'll look up Stephen Pohl right now.
Is
So
it,
you've got 2 in your district then, Mary, as well.
Yeah, that's what I think is because Clyde has been
Clyde and
on,
Stephen.
yeah, and Stephen are the 2.
So, Commissioner Cooney, so the process then, Gina, it's open on the website, so we need to start sending that link out, encouraging folks to apply. Is there usually a process by which we put out a notice when there's a board or commission that's open for applications, or?
Well, right now, I just have it open until filled, unless you guys wanna have a deadline.
It's usually, it's
And
just
then
on
we
our
can-
website all the time. We don't do any special announcements, but just because there's so many that apply,
Yeah.
that are open throughout. So it's more letting people know and encouraging people, usually the planning commission
Right.
members know.
we'll put it on the B&P
We'll let
page
know.
as well.
And I can ask Colin if he would be able to post an advertising for it in the paper.
Then you could do
And
recruiting
Stephen
too.
is in district.
That's what, since I was in Olympia last
He
week,
has to.
I didn't have much time for recruitment, so I'll be working on, and I know Commissioner Jordan,
And you said Stevens just
and
came
it
in.
sounds like Commissioner Kearns as well, will be spreading the word, so we can get some more applications in for consideration. And then the process is, how do you wanna move forward with the process? Is it just appointing as we go, or appointing a slate at a certain point?
So typically what we do is appoint as you go, because each one of the positions are individual and stuff. You know, so I will
But the
formally.
at-large, we probably wanna put our initials on the at-large
Yes.
folks.
Yeah,
Yes.
So we'll want a few of those folks to, just another couple weeks for people to apply.
And recall that because we're starting over, so to speak, the terms for each of these members are staggered from a year to 4 years in their initial terms.
Can we set a deadline for the application?
What time is it?
So we're January 30th, so we can have it open for a week. So no,
February 1st
the
or
6th,
February,
6th or 7th.
February 6th at 5 p.m.
what is the 6th? Let's see.
We can go to the 7th at 5 p.m. and then
Do we want to try and take action next Tuesday on some of these appointments so that we can get Scott started, or do we want to, how long do we want to wait before we take action on some of these? Because I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that I'm going to nominate somebody from my district, but it still has to be approved by all 5, well, at least 3 of the 5. So that's got to come before the board for a blessing and stuff. So, I can formally do that today or tomorrow. But if you want to take action on it next week, you can, or we want to wait until we get all of them in and take action all at once.
we can, I think it's just trying to figure out who, like, for me, I mean, I know both are, I would say Clyde and Stephen Poole. Stephen came into Spokane to run River Park Square. So that's who that is, and then he's a commercial real estate agent in town, so he's got a really good grasp on it. So does Clyde Hasse on all his years in landscaping and homeowner development and all of that, not development, landscaping, all his other things. So I mean, so both are great guys. So it's deciding which one's my, I guess it's like, which are the terms?
Which one's your district and which one you want
Yeah.
to, do you want to offer up one of them at large?
Oh, I definitely do, because I think both of them have been
Yeah.
former chairs and are good. So,
Yeah.
So so I gotta decide which one to,
Which one's which?
which one's which.
Yeah.
That's. So, yes,
Mary, the terms in District 3 or District 4, are, the first term is a 3-year, and for District 5 is a 3-year. For District 1 is 1, for Districts 2 and 3 for 2 years, and then the 2 at-large positions are 4-year appointments from the
Did we clarify that language with the change that we made last week?
beginning. So I
Because we
think
took
I'm
out
reading
the
it
inside, outside UGA.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
so those are just now at-large positions. The at-large positions are just 4 years. It doesn't say inside or outside of the UGA.
so I would probably have Clyde Hasse as my District 4 person and see if we would agree on Stephen Poole for the at-large. That's what I
Again, they've been productive members of the past commissions, and they have extensive institutional knowledge. We would welcome both of them.
And board members, I apologize, Jim Amacio brought to my attention that you have resolution 2013-0151 on the policy for how you appoint boards and commissions. So notwithstanding the fact that you have some ideas on how you might appoint, it does indicate, according to that policy, which I do believe would apply here, that all vacancies on the boards or commissions shall be filled by the Board of County Commissioners shall be advertised on the board's webpage and published in the county's legal newspaper. It does say when appropriate, which gives us some flexibility. So in that case, and there isn't any inconsistency between the state statute or our current code, so that probably should be followed in this case, even though we do have some ideas that it should be advertised.
Is there a time frame for the advertisement?
It doesn't indicate on here that there's a time frame for that.
But you can identify that when you publish it and advise the clerk to put that time frame in the advertisement, so it's very clear when it cuts off.
So we're gonna end up being another month.
Yes, trying to avoid that.
Yeah. Okay, so Jessica, can you build the calendar, see what we can do? Because if we we're on the 30th today. It's not gonna get, how long does it take you to advertise in the paper? Put an advertisement in the paper?
I'll ask him, Colin, he's the one that would do it for me.
Typically, if we're ready to advertise by noon on one day, it'll be published the day following. So we
Okay.
could have something by noon tomorrow, published on Wednesday.
Okay, so we'd start
That
Wednesday,
would,
and then
that would be paid advertising, and then I can ask him to do a little, like a little article in it.
if he chooses to, but I mean, we gotta do a paid advertisement. So Wednesday would be the soonest that we could get it in the paper.
The first.
So the first, so then that would take us to the, if we did it for, say it's open for a week.
Is there a requirement for how long it's got to be open?
It does not say there's a requirement, no.
I mean, honestly, we can have it open till the 10th, because I mean,
No, I'm not.
we gotta have it at least a week, I think, otherwise it's just a day.
One day only.
What time is it? Get on down here by 5 o'clock. So, well,
So a week from,
can I offer up a scenario? If we left it open until 5 o'clock on the 6th, it would allow us time to review the applications on the 7th and then have something approved or on the board by the 14th. And I know that that's a short timetable, but, you know, it's not unrealistic, I don't believe. I'm just concerned that if we wait a whole nother month for, I mean, Scott's gonna
Right.
take out contracts on some of us.
No, but, so have it close on the 6th, there, everyone
Scott?
sees who's
I know.
up for
I was thinking about 5 o'clock on the 6th. I just throw that out as an option. I mean, if you want to leave 2 weeks, I'm fine.
I think-
just-
well, you said we can't advertise till this Wednesday, the 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least to the, I mean, I see what you were saying, like, go till the Friday, the 10th, or the 8th or the 10th, so, I mean, I'm gonna need a day, you know, I'm gonna need a few days just to review. Just reviewing on a Tuesday is sometimes challenging.
You expecting,
Flag of applicants.
We're gonna get 20 applications.
Good. I hope she doesn't get a single
Have in
one. Just to show
My
her, she'll get
OPMT.
0. You get 0.
So, well, although,
But if you want to leave it out, I was just throwing out an idea.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to think, because I mean, we'd have to know by the Thursday,
Oh,
the
then-
9th, to put it on the consent agenda
Yeah.
for the 14th, otherwise it's all
I
violated.
know.
I mean, we can do it,
But we don't want to do a special meeting, just to review
No.
these.
when do you guys meet next, would you?
The next scheduled meeting is February 16th. And we can in effect move that, we could move it out to the 23rd. We could move it to the April or March 2nd if we had to. So we can accommodate some flexibility.
I mean, if you miss the 23rd, can you take it to the 30th?
February, yes.
Just checking to see who's paying attention.
And any of those dates are still okay to keep us generally on track for our work plan.
And are be going with the same, where we're doing the sheet to see if we have a consensus, and then it goes on the consent agenda?
So how long does that usually take? Since it's a new process for me.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take all that long, it just depends on how many phone calls, you know, if you feel you need to make a phone call to talk to somebody or not, to do a phone interview. Or redo, I mean, obviously, I know my people. You
I know my
yours.
people.
So, I don't know, on the,
We know.
So if we did it on the, had it even close on the 8th or the 10th, then we would have to have, the folders would need to be back to Gina by the 15th, so that way it could get on the agenda on the 16th to be on the consent agenda for the 21st. That's probably the fastest we could probably.
That seems reasonable. Commissioner Jordan, I see nodding. Okay.
So what happened?
Sometimes I'm nodding and sometimes I'm swinging in my chair, so I would nod.
Maybe I'd say we close on the 9th at 5 o'clock, so that way it gives Gina a chance to put it all together on the 10th.
Yeah.
Okay, and that way, and maybe just send a packet out to each person. So that way everyone's got it. And then sign off by the 15th.
Then that gives Monday, Tuesday, if you want to check in on folks, follow up,
Yeah,
and then sign off by the 15th. Okay,
sign off by the 15th.
all
There
right.
we go, we got a plan. So then it would be on the consent for the 21st.
Okay.
So you could do the 23rd.
We can do that.
Because we would kind of know on the sign off, if there's any, people aren't agreeing to.
So we'd have to make sure that everybody's available, because they'll just have newly been seated and may not know their own schedule
And
availability.
we'll put that in the announcement that goes in the ad too, that it meets generally these days, 9 AM in the hearing room.
Commissioner French.
Do you have to have a fully constituted planning commission to be able to move some of your stuff forward?
You just need a quorum.
So you need 4 people. Okay. I'm just thinking that if for some reason you're delayed or not able to recruit in that time period, we could at least take an action on those that we know so that we can have the planning commission be able to move forward while we're waiting to fill up the last couple seats. So that could be a fallback.
True.
Okay.
We'll do our best to rally folks to apply. All those hundreds of people that'll be waiting at the door.
Okay, Commissioner Jordan?
It's my understanding the group meets at 9, right?
That's correct.
Or 8?
I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration given to change that. And I haven't really tried to proactively recruit people yet, but I will. I'm just a little bit worried about a meeting right in the middle of the workday, but I just was curious for your thoughts on that, for people being able to participate.
Over this past year and a half or so, the former planning commission was asked several times in public comment if they would consider another time, and they have not willingly considered another time yet.
And do they meet at 8 or 9?
9 AM.
9 AM.
So that's their choice as a group, and that's been the consensus is 9 for them. Okay.
Yes, and just to speak to that to some extent, some of these meetings go all day. So I mean, they're not short meetings. I mean, we've worked through lunch and ended up leaving
6,
it.
7 hours.
Yeah, so I mean, if you put it in the evening, you're either gonna need to split it up over several, or you're gonna be staying until 10 or 11.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Okay.
Thank you. Progress. Sounds like a plan.
It's gonna go shorter than the resolution. Which is all good, but we'll get there.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
This might not have been meant to be in the packet. This is on the consent for tomorrow, the
Yes,
no shooting areas,
correct, that's for tomorrow.
but there's no changes or anything that,
There might be, but we might be doing striking that to do a continuing, like the no shooting.
Yeah, there is we discovered that during the review of boards and commissions that the board had previously adopted a resolution the date, Jeff signed here, that effectively took out term limits for your boards and commissions that you're appointed to. So that will have to be a motion to amend tomorrow to remove that. We're gonna have to continue the public hearing on it. That's the no shooting one. And then everything else that comes forward for reconstituting will have that language on it. We just, by the time this got published, we found that resolution a couple days later, so we'll have to have you amend that, that item tomorrow.
So there's a current resolution on file that says no board or commission of the county has term limits.
For ones you appoint to out the inside advisory committees. Yep,
Can you share that with the
yep.
board? Thank you.
Gina has it.
Jeff McMorris has it, Commissioner. It was the same one that Jessica Pilgrim alluded to, that basically said we advertise and post open commissions and boards. It did away with limiting terms to 2 4-year terms. The board took that off. And so the present advisory committee that we're talking about limits you to 2 terms, and we want to eliminate that so they're all consistent, right, Scott? And so so that's what they're going to do.
Consistent with the resolution.
Right.
Not for all boards and commissions, we take away the term limits.
All the ones that you appoint to your internal advisory boards and commissions.
Except if the statute provides otherwise,
Yes.
board members, as were, like the planning commission, you've got 2-year terms, and 4 you've got, but then ultimately they're all 4, aren't they?
But some of the other boards and commissions we appoint to have got bylaws that have term limits on them. Theoretically.
No comment on the bylaws, Commissioner French.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then that takes us to Commissioner French, a resolution on the duties of chair, vice chair discussion.
So this is, thank you, Madam Chair. This is more about house cleaning than it is anything else, since we are not doing the retreat until March.
March 6th.
March 6th. I thought that it might be helpful to at least catch up on one of the items that I was hoping to deal with in the retreat. And so I think you all got a copy of the resolution that we adopted for chair and vice chair and all that kind of stuff. And so on the second page, offer up for your consideration as an update where it says regional meetings shall be defined as a meeting of no more than 1 board member. With the new composition now going to 5, I'm wondering if that should be 2 as opposed to 1. So it's no more than 2 commissioners, which would mean that a meeting with 3 would constitute a meeting of the board, which I think then falls into the Open Public Meetings Act, notice requirements and things like that and stuff. So I think it's pretty innocuous in terms of an update.
I would think, just to head off when the legislature moves us to 7, let's put a majority of the board, rather than having a numerical value, put majority of the, because it's the same thing. More than 2 is a majority. On this version, when it was adopted, more than 1 was a majority. That's the point. So I would think just saying a majority of the board. And I would throw out something that I know, and I think the last sentence says it. These regional meetings shall be conducted by the board or designee, but like with Skrills, we're not calling that meeting to order. That was more under Kathleen's purview. I mean, her name was always on the header. It always came from her. That seemed like more of a meeting she was calling, but
I think it's actually, I don't know, Jim, the ILA on that.
are the Skrills meetings BOCC
That's why we. have to go
initiated meetings? And I
Not
never thought
really.
they were.
Not really, because all the counties are part of Shrills, and so all the county commissioners and all the counties are on the Shrill board, if I recall right. Gina, is that correct?
That is correct, and then chair for the county commissioner is the one that runs the meeting.
But it's really constituted by the county commissioners.
all the commissioners who signed the ILA and all the counties constitute that. That is correct.
So I would advocate for us just clarifying, maybe in that sentence, that a regional meeting is if we're going to be approving agendas, I think that's only appropriate if it's a meeting called by this BOCC. I mean, if we're invited, and I still think Skrill, I debate whether Skrills is one we are calling. Well, no, it seemed odd that we're approving that agenda, but it's like, but it's not really our meeting.
But it's because we're the BHASO is
Yeah.
what drives that.
But it was more like that department was calling that meeting, but I see where there could be other situations where a majority of us are going to a meeting, but if it's not called by us, we're not really going to be approving the agenda because we won't know the agenda because we've been invited to attend and we won't know till we get there.
Right,
Do you get,
well, but
am I making sense what I'm saying? Like if the mayor of Spokane calls a meeting and then they invite the valley, they invite all the cities and us, we're not approving that agenda because we don't call the meeting. But if we were the initiating government and calling that meeting, then we would set the agenda, which I think that final sentence kinda, because it's conducted by us, but maybe we need to clarify that more because we had issues with that over the last
I
year.
guess the question is, because then somebody else brought up that we had to do the STA meeting because there was just two, now
There's two on it.
now there's two, which
But
would be
before there
less.
were two, and that was a majority of the board, but that was not the subject of this, because that's the STA board calling a special meeting. I thought this was a meeting, Commissioner CUNY, that this Board of County Commissioners called for whatever purpose. I thought that's what this was all about.
So offer up this as an example for discussion, I guess. Technically, well, let me rephrase this. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe that the EOC is led by the sheriff, the health officer, and the chair of the board. So it's kind of the three of them are the ones that, so when the EOC convenes a meeting, is that technically a meeting of the board, or is it a meeting of EOC?
Because there's not a majority there.
Because.
But
because
it could be though, is what I'm getting at. So like when we were going through COVID, all of us were there.
Right, which made it a public meeting.
Right.
But then if there was other meetings that the EOC had that then were not public meetings, that were
Got
just
it,
that group.
got it. Yeah, that would complicate that. Yeah.
So that's why that's not.
Okay.
The only one that I can think of is the Council of Governments, which I will not have another Council of Governments at this point. So that's the regional meeting.
Well,
I mean, what other regional meeting are we having?
But if we have a gathering to discuss our law and justice, regional law and justice center, I could see there being large community meetings that we would call, we would sort of be the guide to those. But I mean, yeah, I guess you could classify that as a council of governments. So that'd be a good council of governments topic.
but,
Could be.
but you're the chair, so you would be the lead on the council of governments.
Well, in the past.
But they missed there.
Well, in the past, the Council of Governments was always the third district. I don't know why, or second, because it was at the fairgrounds and all of that. So that's how this came about. So I'm just saying, do we just say we can't, a Council of Governments meeting instead of a regional meeting? Because I don't know what other regional meetings.
No, I don't have any problem with the council of governments. I don't have any problem with you chairing it. I mean, that's just, that's one of the duties of the chair, so I don't have any issue with that.
That's not one of the duties of the chair. I mean, it hasn't been on the Council of Governments. It was the third or whatever district I was before, District 2.
Well, I mean,
You've never been the third. How are you mixing that up?
Funny thing is, I don't think when I was on city council, I even knew that. I assumed Council of Governments was the county taking the lead to bring everybody together once in a while to talk about key topics like the TBD countywide, the jail, all these countywide issues, and to get the input of the different communities.
And so part of the confusion is that when we started the Council of Governments, it was when Mark Richard was the chair. And so, and so then, because Jim Brown was the one that orchestrated it, and it just fell to him every year, then he was the one that did it every year. And so it was just kind of it morphed into Mary's district. But originally, it was a board that convened the Council of Governments. Mark just happened to be the chair that year that they did it. So, but I hadn't even thought about the Council of Governments when I was thinking about this, so.
I think that's the only meeting that I can think of, that if we had a regional meeting.
Sorry. So could I see a copy of the original resolution 18-0210? Because I don't know if it's all included in here or.
Yes, all the
That's
underlying-
it. There's only three subsections. 1.01.01, 1.01.02,
Pretty easy.
and point
You
three.
you have the red line version. or
Oh, okay, that's
that-
it.
That's it.
That's
So
it.
this is,
There haven't been a lot of changes to this over time, and the only reason I thought about it now was because we pushed the retreat out, otherwise it'd be a topic.
because I think this seems like something we should talk about at the retreat, because there might be other areas beyond duties of chair and vice chair that we want to talk about in terms of rules of procedure, right? Like, how do you get items on the agenda, what the process is,
So,
beyond just what's in here.
well, so to that point, as long as you brought it up, the only thing, so we have in 1.1.3, say any board member may place an item on the agenda for consideration by the board at any regular session meeting.
Right.
So any of us can do that.
Right.
The one thing that has been kind of a policy, but maybe you need to memorialize it, is no single board member can remove an item from the agenda and stuff. So if you give any one of us the ability to remove an agenda item, technically, when there's an item before the board, it belongs to the board. It doesn't belong to an individual commissioner. And so if you have one person that can remove it, then you have one person has a superior vote to the other four. The other four might be ready to move forward, but because that one person removed it, then that one person trumped the other four. So we've always, by practice, said no one commissioner can take something off the agenda because it belongs to the board, not the one person. So whether it's your own agenda item or somebody else's agenda item, it doesn't matter. Once it's on the agenda, it belongs to the board. And so that was the other suggestion. And
I mean, there's just a
But then
lot
trying
of,
to
there's a lot of
manage-
pieces
so
here.
I would say too,
Yeah.
as the chair, sometimes you're trying to manage how much is on the agenda, too. So, I mean, I don't know, that's where I think there could be some procedures on how something gets on the agenda, that maybe we need two board members to have it placed on the agenda. You can talk to another board member. I don't know. I mean, just I can see scenarios where if there's a crazy day and everybody's got like two items they want to put on the agenda, and Scott's got a full day already. So it's just trying to figure out how do we go through those things.
maybe the way to address that, now, and I think you might have hit on a good idea, is what would happen if we had the agendas reviewed by the chair and the vice chair? Then that way you'd have two people there, and one of you could end up having to chair the meeting, doesn't matter which one. But the other thing is that the one that prepares the agenda is the clerk, not the board. We review the agenda, but we don't prepare the agenda. And so that's a different item too.
Correct. I mean, Scott and I just go through it to make sure that, everything's been briefed if it hasn't been briefed, we talk about that, we talk about timing, that's all
And
we're
that's what we
doing.
could add to this, with more discussion, we could say, does something have to have a touch before it goes? Not necessarily, I kind of like board members being able to, if they want to put an item on, that's our right. But in terms of staff items, that's where, like, do we want to make sure there's a touch, a briefing before it gets on the agenda? I know you've done a lot to get into a rhythm and improve that. Do we require a briefing paper? Like, there's just some things that I'm seeing, like, oh, some people have briefing papers, some people don't. Like, that's what I was hoping to talk about on the 6th. Like, what is it that we're expecting from staff? And then what is it that we're expecting from ourselves, right, as a board? So there's kind of two different areas. And it's pretty silent on what goes on the agenda beyond what board members want to see on, right? So I don't know, there's just, seems like we could add just a little bit of expectation around that so that it's the same for every department and anybody at the county that wants to add something to the agenda. I don't know. I'm looking at you, Scott. Okay. I know that was your goal with trying to do briefings like at least a week in advance.
Yep. I think.
But like today, like there should have probably been a briefing paper on with some detail about the resource officer, because then it would have been in writing the total cost and things like,
Yeah.
anyway.
No, it's a good example.
Yep, all very good examples. And while we're doing that by practice, or trying to be more deliberate about doing that by practice, it's not memorialized somewhere. It's more of just me holding our teams accountable, which is always fun because you have other electeds who I don't have
That's
any
true.
oversight of, other than please make sure you're following this process. So I think there's a lot of those things, and I think even going through in the offsite, let's walk through how an agenda gets pulled together. Let's demystify the process. I've been trying to have Gina get the agenda out to all of you earlier. In the past, it was sometimes not until 5 o'clock on Friday. Well, that's not a good enough time for you all to be able to review before you come in on Monday. So right now, I'm asking Gina, once Mary and I have met, send out a draft agenda. It's still subject to change, but it gives you an idea what's on there. We could even go as far as soon as it's developed, even though it's draft, Gina sends it out to all of you. The chair and I meet, or whoever meets, and we formalize it more, because there are moving parts. Sometimes Gina will offer suggested, or the person who's wanting to brief will say, I think it's going to be this much time, and Mary and I will look at that and go, oh no, it's going to be this much time, or you're asking for this much time, oh no, it's going to be this much time. So we do a lot of kind of changing of the stuff. It's nothing magical about
Is
it. but-
Gina in on those meetings to share with you why she chose a certain length of time?
No, but oftentimes it's it's the person who's briefing who's asked for the time. Gina's not generally suggesting the time. She's just taking what she asks them. Okay, how much time do you want to brief on this thing?
Okay.
Well, and you raise a good point, and we have had policy by practice for as long as I've been here. But I think now we're at a point to where we need to have those policies reduced to writing so that we can have a common understanding about what we've done in the past, and how, is that what we want to do in the future? Or do we want to change it for what we do in the future? Like Amber is saying, if it requires a 1-touch or a 2-touch before we take action on it, then that's should be reduced to policy so that everybody knows. The other thing, and I will raise it, but it's a retreat item, so I'm not going to suggest that we talk about it today. But the other part of it is, what collectively, what are we willing to allow to be put on the agenda? I mean, for instance, when I was with the city, we would have individual council members that would say, for instance, I'd like to be able to have the council take a vote on Ukraine. What? We don't have anything to do with that. But it was more of political posturing than it was city business. And so do we want our agendas to be county business? Or do you want it to be a platform for a political agenda? And that takes a lot of thought and debate, and I understand that.
It's no different than the proclamations. But
The proclamations are things,
two people to agree, well, we did
yeah,
request that two commissioners had approved a proclamation, and then we would move forward with the proclamation.
but correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me from memory that all the proclamations we've done have been community-based proclamations.
For some reason, I think we did one for Ukraine though, so that's what makes me think,
Well, we did one for some reason, I want to think that we did one for the Relief Center.
yeah.
Because we were all three at the grand opening for the Thrive. And I thought we did a proclamation to support Thrive, which is a local initiative.
I don't remember, but we've done one for law enforcement,
Yes,
you know, that.
local
that's
issue,
a,
yeah.
You know, and, you know.
But there's some
issues.
kind of
We
local
have a sheriff's
nexus.
department.
We do.
We what?
Gina,
We have
do
a
you
sheriff's
have
department.
the
But I
one
mean,
that
so I mean, I just,
preceded this?
I mean, it's almost like those
Because
are
this had
more
changes.
proclamations,
it.
which would still require three people
Right,
to.
yeah.
I don't know, I mean, that's why I would, you know, come up with, you know, does it take two people at least to put something on the agenda?
Mhm.
So at least you've got a couple of people that are willing to say that versus just one person. Now that you can talk to another commissioner.
Well, and that's why I said, you know, it's probably a retreat discussion because you raise a good point, you know. And if you say it's a majority of the board to put something on the agenda, then the majority of the board controls everything on the agenda, which means the minority doesn't have a say. And I don't think any of us want to be in that position, so, but you're right, maybe it's two people that get something on the agenda.
I mean, and I don't know, I mean, I think it is, you know, probably good to just throw this stuff out there, so we'll be
Yeah.
talked about at the retreat.
Yeah, so, but anyway, I was trying to just do some house cleaning for now, so that it got us to March is all I was trying to do and start a conversation. I didn't figure we'd finish it today.
Define the regional meetings, but I mean, like I said, I really feel like, you know, we're saying regional meeting includes, but is not limited to council of governments. I mean, I just kind of feel like that's really the main one that we do, if we do one.
Well, do we want to take the reference to the council of governments off of it and just say regional meetings in general? I mean,
Or I don't know what other regional meetings we're hosting.
well,
I mean, I guess that would be the thing, that it would be a regional meeting we're hosting. Because I guess TA we don't host. Shrills kind of host.
I don't think
Sorry.
we do.
Well, Plan Commission, I mean, that's another one to talk about because Plan Commission already gets noticed by our planning department.
But we're not on it.
We don't sit on that.
I'm sorry, regional, that was not like that.
Oh, the steering
Committee of Elected Officials.
Yes, because that was the other one you did have it approved, because, which,
But is that meeting the intent or do we need to clarify that?
that's a good point. Maybe
we're not,
Those are
maybe
regional.
we exclude that, or
because we're not really hosting our planning commission,
Yeah.
or planning.
It's hosted by a department,
Yep.
Yep,
like
but it's-
Skrills.
but it's a rotating thing.
you're not gonna let squirrels go,
It's-
are you?
It's hosted by a department. We don't host
I
it.
think he just likes to say that acronym over and over.
If the
I
three
always
of
say
us,
shrills.
if the three of us,
Shrills.
the three of us aren't there, that meeting still happens
Yes.
because we don't host it. It's hosted by a department. So
We can pick it up.
I'm
I mean,
just,
but that's why I say, it's like, it's, at some point, it's like, it's really just the council of governments.
Yeah.
Or a regional meeting we host, which is what that is.
at least it needs to be changed to a majority. And because I will throw out an example. If Chris and Amber went and met with somebody from the city of Spokane and the city of the Valley, you guys wouldn't want to have to come back to us and tell us what you're gonna talk about and have us approve what you can talk about at that meeting. I'm just gonna throw that as a very plausible possibility of something that could happen. So,
Oh, so you're saying that's why this.
it should be
the
majority.
text is
Majority
out
of
of-
the board
If
instead
two
of,
Out of,
people go to a meeting with two other cities, then that's them. That is
So we
not a
could say,
majority, that's not a public meeting. But
and
if
we
a
could
third
put-
person is there and it's advertised as,
The OCC hosts the meeting.
yes.
yeah. Well, and maybe that's the difference,
Yeah,
is,
I
that's the differentiating element.
I guess what we don't want to see happen is a meeting is held with all 5 of our names on it, and a bunch of us whose name is on there as hosting the meeting have no idea that meeting's happening, so. Until we get the invite to come, so.
Or until we get the minutes.
There you go.
Anyway, my goal was just to try and get some conversation and maybe some updates on this thing that clearly, like Josh indicated, the majority and some of these other things. So anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
So Commissioner Cooney, staff's not going to move forward on this until after the retreat, where there may be other changes. Is that what I'm hearing, Commissioner French?
Well, I think there are going to be other changes
That's
made
what I
at the
thought.
retreat, but, some of these are just perfunctory
Yeah.
edit changes, and I don't know that going to majority of the board, is that?
Maybe do we want to then vote on it as a resolution and then have it change another month?
Doesn't matter to me, whatever you guys want to do.
Well, I asked Gina if she could also get us,
Anticipating having any of these meetings coming up between now and the retreat.
I also asked Gina if she could get us the one prior to the 2018 changes, because there were things made when we got a new chair in 2018 that 2 people wanted to make changes at that time too, so if you could get us a copy of.
Authorize me to sign notices on your guys' behalf.
I became chair and you 2 made changes to the so let's just be honest here.
Did we really?
Yes, you 2 made a lot of changes as soon as I became, March 2018, what happened 2 months earlier? I became chair. So,
When in 2016 would
yeah.
Mary, obviously we didn't go far enough.
authorize me to sign notices, public notice.
okay, but there were
And-
things added
but-
to the
and so
2018. Yeah, if you could get
okay.
us a copy of the 26, just so we can see what changes were made. Maybe we gotta roll back some things.
When I drafted this, I went in and looked at the cities, other counties, and put in just the minimal stuff that the then board wanted. And Mr. Walter, you're correct.
I
The city of
remember.
Spokane has
I
a good
didn't forget.
template. The city of the Valley has a good template with 1 or 2 touches or whatever you want to do. So those can be made available to the board at your retreat, and Scott can have someone brief him on it, and you can give us direction how you want to move forward.
Retreat's getting longer and longer.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, and Amber, if reducing our policies to writing, I think is a good thing. The question is, how many policies do we want to reduce to writing, and how many of them do we want to continue as policies of practice? And that's for the 5 of us to decide where's that comfort level that will make us feel like, we're not either one being ignored or excluded or whatever and stuff. So, but I know I don't have any additional edits to my list of things for the retreat. I don't know if anybody else has submitted your ideas about what you want to talk about and stuff, so.
Yeah.
And have we made any headway in terms of finding a facilitator for that?
We have not. We're still doing some assessments, and I think Ashley and I need to kind of connect on a few.
So the one thing that Mary and I attended at the Wasack meeting was the Angel Group.
Great ranges.
Yeah, and stuff, and so I did forward to Ashley the contact for that. And I don't know that that's the right group for an all-day retreat, but it might be the right group to come in for, what they did for us, a couple hours. Maybe that's a separate thing from the retreat. I don't have any dog in that fight, but, I think I found the session informative and helpful. Hopefully you did too. So.
What I do know, I added, I would like 1 hour on parliamentary procedure just to make sure we're all on the same page as we start to do all these amended motions and amending, because I'm trying to keep track of it all. Which I think I've done fairly well to keep track of.
You did a good job. I mean, that was.
But I think just to refresh us all on Robert's rules and parliamentary procedures.
Well, and I think, Jane McFarland, I know you and I have attended Jane's sessions and stuff, and if Chris, you and Amber have not attended Jane McFarland's session.
Oh, is that what you forwarded?
Parliamentary procedure. Jurassic parliamentary procedures. She does a really good job. Well, she does a really good job of kind of reducing it down to your very basics. And it is, I've attended it 3 times. I think she does a great job.
Good.
And it's worth the effort and it's worth the cost. I mean, we actually hired her to come to the county and did a session for the whole county.
And what I don't know, because she's got other people helping her now, if they could do it like a 1-hour Zoom with us, which would be good. So Chris.
Question, I have 2 questions, one for Jim. I saw this resolution that's being referenced. Are there other written rules of the board currently beyond that, or is it really just that resolution?
My understanding, Commissioner, is that resolution is the only one that I am aware of that addresses that issue.
And then another idea to throw out for the retreat, might be good to have some kind of menu of options to look at for some of these agenda processes. Maybe we could look at other counties that have a bit of a larger board. I had a conversation with a former commissioner in Pierce County, because that's the county that has had mixed parties on the county council. And they had an interesting process, how they come up with their agenda. I'm sure it's a little bit different from the city. It sounded like in their case, they did keep the ability to have single commissioner put something on the agenda, but I'm also thinking about what Chair Cooney said as well. So just maybe if there's somebody who could do some research into how do other counties do it in terms of agenda setting, so we could kind of know the options to choose from, would be helpful.
So I will give you some background on Pierce County. That was a commission where they actually had open fights between commissioners on the dais. And one actually threatened to pull a gun on the other one, which was interesting because the other one was her son. So it's a very interesting commission that I would hope not to replicate. I don't want to.
Well, they did mention that when I talked to them. There was no mention of threats, just.
Not surprised.
But my point is, it might be good to know maybe 3 different common ways that different counties set their agenda, if they have any detail to it.
Okay.
Okay, so I apologize. I did not realize today was going to go this long, so I have a 4:30 meeting, but we do have an executive session, it sounds like. So we will continue your conversation at retreat.
So just kind of a what if, I know I agree with making changes maybe wholly rather than piecemeal.
Yeah.
But I think.
But what if we are invited, like we just talked about this morning, what if the mayor invites me to a meeting to discuss, the homeless structure?
Mayor's hosting that, so that's why I'm
That's,
thinking
it's not,
hosted.
So do we
relevant
agree
in
that
this.
that's
Okay. I'm
what
just
this
saying,
says?
what if?
I think
Because over the last year, we have not had an agreement that that's what the
Right.
current language says.
Yeah, well, that's why I guess that was part of what I was putting into it, was saying it's majority, but then we've got to somehow put in that it's a meeting we're hosting, because I can't commit to what.
But what she's saying is, do we need to do that because in the next 30 days, she could be invited to something like that? Because we have been operating for the last
I don't know
12
if you call it a
months.
regional meeting, but like a
Right,
meeting,
but it's
that's
not
why
a
it's like
regional
meeting, regional,
But
I don't know what it
we haven't
means.
been operating that way over the last 12 months. we've been approving those agendas for meetings that,
If-
under the way we're discussing right
holding
now
them,
of what
though,
we
but I can't
want.
control
Right,
it.
no, if,
The city or the valley
yeah, but
wanna
I
invite
can't
us.
control someone else's agenda.
I know, and that's how I interpret the language that's there, but over the last 12 months, that is not the process we've been operating under.
Somebody, like, so Shrills came to us and GMA steering committee.
Okay,
Those are only two that have come to us. I mean, because we had the question, does STA constitute, since there was more than two, a majority was on those boards. So that's why I'm saying, I would change this to be majority and then a meeting we're hosting,
yes,
not somebody else is hosting.
correct. But that's not what
No.
it says today, so
Right.
she's asking, should we change that portion
At least
very
until-
soon, in case in the next, before our retreat, two of us get invited, because today it does not say majority, it says one, it says more than one. So this is current policy, so do we need to change that in the very near term, so we're not inadvertently violating our own resolution?
Now I'm with you.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
get-
I-
you get
yeah,
what I- no, now I
just-
get it. Now I get
I
it.
just don't
So-
think in the next 30 days, we're really gonna have that issue.
We can have
No,
a
I just-
resolution
I'm
ready
just
tomorrow
asking.
by
I don't
me
want this, I
to
don't
change
know.
it from one to majority. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say. If it's changed to majority, there wouldn't be an issue if we made that one change in two places. That's what I'm hearing you say, Commissioner Kearns.
I would say we could put it on the, not, we don't have to bi-week, we could put it on the 14th.
Following agenda, that would be fine. That'd be the 7th, Commissioner Cuny. I don't know what that date is off the top of my head.
So,
You
yeah,
could make that simple change from the word from one to a majority. I think I'm saying, Commissioner Kearns, is that what you want?
No, I mean, in the last
Yeah.
couple weeks, there's been a meeting with two
It'd have to be a majority, so
I
there'd
mean-
have to be,
but that's not what it says today.
I understand, Commissioner.
You know, and it doesn't say a meeting we call. I think that's the intent, but it doesn't say
Doesn't
that.
say that.
And that's not how we've been operating over the last 12 months either.
I
So,
understand.
you know, that we just discussed, there was a homeless meeting, right? There were two commissioners, the Valley and the city of Spokane. I mean, right? That's a meeting of the community, but so I think we should change this so we don't have situations like
We aren't
that.
violating our own policies.
It's a simple fix. We all understand what we want it to say. Some of us think it already says it. But let's just get that taken care of. I think that's an easy thing, so we're not faced with that problem.
Mr. Jordan, are you okay with that? I would
Yeah,
say-
I think I'm okay with a short-term fix, and then if we need to further discuss it at the retreat, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put it on
I
for
just
next-
with the presentation this morning, there's gonna be opportunities to talk with multiple jurisdictions, I'm hoping, over the next 90 days
Yeah.
about this homeless structure, so I don't want this prohibiting our participation as the county. Multiple county
We will
commissioners.
change it to majority.
Right.
And meeting we call. So if it's not a meeting we call,
Well, I think we
there's
gotta
no issue.
figure out,
The two changes you
Right, it's not our-
have written
the
in there
mayor
with Ken,
of
those
Spokane
are,
or
those
Spokane
are,
Valley.
those are simple changes I think we can all agree on.
okay, I just gotta figure out
just-
where that would go. Jim, will you be
I
able to figure
trust
that out?
Jim.
I think in the last sentence I hear, these regional meetings called by the Board of County
There you
Commissioners
go.
shall be conducted by the board. That's what I would probably, so I'll take this, take out the underlining and lining, put these new changes in so you can see it. I'll have it ready
Yes.
for the board next Tuesday for your consideration.
Okay, how long is it, okay, so would you like to?
Dale, is your item time sensitive today?
No, it's not.
Can do tomorrow?
We can do it tomorrow.
What would the preference be? We have a pending potential
How
exec
long?
session for what, 10 minutes, Dale?
10 minutes, probably five to 10.
5 to 10. So.
And no
you-
action needs to be taken?
No, just discussion.
Okay. So just do it now and.
Do it, you be okay with
5
your
minutes
meeting?
and, yeah, I'm just trying to text let the person know. Okay, so we are gonna go into executive session. It is 4:29, so I'll say 4:30 for 10 minutes. We will be adjourning after that executive session. Purpose,
To discuss pending and potential litigation,
who's all gonna be in it?
commissioners, executive management team, Dale Anderson from our civil, and then any of you gentlemen,
I will not be here.
John Grasso
John
from civil as
Grasso
well.
from Civil will be here as well.
I would ask Mr. Anderson, will we be possibly coming back into a formal session? No?
No.
Okay.
No, so no action will be taken, so once we're done with our executive session, we will be adjourned for the day.
Does Commissioner Jordan know how to zoom into executive
Commissioner Jordan, do you have the Zoom link for executive session? He does.
Yes, I believe so.
So you come out of this and then you zoom into that one.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.